So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the CSols May webinar on Lab Informatics Project Leadership, Doing the Right Things. Before we jump into the webinar, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been in the informatics industry with both lab and manufacturing environment for well over 25 years. It's probably a lot more than 30 actually, but we won't go into that. I have worked with within the lab, LIMS, ELN, LES, CDS, SDMS systems, and within the manufacturing environment with ERP, manufacturing execution systems, electronic batch record systems, etc. I've also worked in a variety of different industries, including pharma, biotech, chemical, and petrochemical. It's very interesting doing very similar things, but in different industries to see how best practices change, and best practices are often dependent on industry. So over that time, I have been able to gather an awful lot of knowledge of lab and lab information processes and workflows, and also at the same time pick up a lot of experience in IT in general. So I'd like to think of myself as somebody that can bring value to lab informatics systems, certainly have been doing that over the last couple of decades or so. So enough about me, let's move into what we're going to be talking about today. So this is all about project leadership and how we can maximize the possibility that on our informatics projects that we actually do the right things. So we're going to kick off this webinar by comparing and contrasting project leadership with project management. We're then going to touch on the challenges from a project level perspective that labs are facing when implementing informatics systems. Going to touch on the traditional approach to managing the project and talk about perhaps it's not the best way to do things. And then we're going to talk about how you can manage it slightly different based upon providing value both rapidly and continuously throughout the life expectancy of your product. We'll then do a wrap-up summary and open it up for Q&A. So in order to get things going, there's a guy called Peter Drucker. I would expect that some of you in the audience have heard of him. He was an American management consultant who really focused on organizational management, managing large organizations of people. So he was very much a people-based management consultant. And he coined the phrase of management is doing things right and leadership is doing the right things. So what we're going to be doing as we go through the rest of this presentation is looking at things from a leadership perspective and attempt to ensure that in fact we are doing the right things. What is the process to enable that? So anyway, that's what we're going to be doing as we go through this. So, just try and think of the doing things right and doing the right things as we go through this webinar. There won't be a quiz at the end, but you can pretend there will be. Okay. So project management versus project leadership. What I'm going to do now is just spend a few minutes going through some typical activities that both managers and leaders perform, compare and contrast them, and then as we go through the rest of the webinar, we will be able to see how certain components of things that I will describe are related to the project leadership role, and the others are related to the project management role. So that's the game plan. Let's see how it works out. So project management is typically tactical project execution. So the type of thing I'm thinking here is that we have a project manager. He knows what the scope, the budget, the timeline is, and he will manage the project from a tactical basis, be focused on the project and execute it to within those particular constraints. On the contrast of that, a project leadership is more concerned with high-level vision and overall strategy development. So the project leader, the role is to understand what the corporate vision is, what the lab vision is, how it fits into the corporate vision, and part of his role is to be able to develop a strategy to implement various systems that provide capabilities to the organization and develop an overall plan. If we look again at the project manager, he typically follows a methodology, right? So most project managers these days are PMP or equivalent certified. They know how to, they know the process, they know how to manage a project. When I'm talking about project management in terms in this webinar, I'm really talking about project managers, yes, most likely certified, PMP certified, but those that have spent considerable time or performed a large number of lab informatics projects. So a project manager follows methodology, whereas a project leader is attempting to create a value-based program. And when I say value, I mean business value. He wants to be able to create a program that spawns perhaps a number of projects, each one of those projects creating business value. The project manager does the detailed project planning on a project basis, whereas the project leader will create the overall framework. So the project leader will define the framework, will define a value-based program that fits around that framework, and relies quite heavily on project managers to focus on budget, timeline, and scope, which is really the tactical execution of the project, while the project leader will continue to focus on creating business value. And as we go through this webinar, I'll give you some examples of how the leadership role may aid the project management role when it comes to making project decisions based upon business value. So a project manager manages and monitors works. A project leader will support projects with strategic decisions based on value, and we'll show some examples later on. Project manager really communicates project status, does a lot of work, of course. I mean, it's not easy managing projects, whereas the project leader provides proactive guidance. He is trying to look ahead of the project, trying to understand changes and things like that that can be made to make the project manager's job that much easier. And then finally, at least on this particular slide, project manager is typically resistant to change. What do I mean by that? Well, for those of you that have managed projects, one of the things you typically dread is getting a change of scope, requesting additional functionality to be added to the project, knowing full well that you're not going to be able to change the end date of the project, nor will you be able to perhaps put additional resources on it. So typically project managers are resistant to change, whereas project leaders are more open to change, but they're only open to change if that change provides business value, and the value it provides can justify changes in the project scope. Okay, so that's a high-level overview of the different roles there. So a question you may be asking, well, how is a project leader made? Well, certainly within CSols, project leaders, all of our project leaders were and still are project managers. They've managed a large number of lab informatics projects. They've learned through experience where the greatest value can be derived from various lab informatics products, and have put their knowledge into practice, advising and guiding others along their information journey. So that's how we do it within CSols. All of our project leaders are, in fact, formerly and still are project managers.